writing about 10 years ago. So can you just
Mhm.
reintroduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about what you write and so on.
Yes, I'm Janet Walden-West, and I write urban fantasy, paranormal romance, and contemporary romance.
Awesome. And you have your debut novel, which is coming out this month, I believe.
Yes, it is coming out the 21st, Salt and Stilettos. It's a contemporary romance with City Owl Press.
I'm going to take you to actually write Salt and Stilettos.
Oh, wow. Probably about 5 or 6 months. It was the first contemporary romance I had ever written. I had worked on urban fantasy, and of course, at the time, there was a kind of a buying slump in the genre. And so, just as a change, I decided I'm going to try to write contemporary romance since romance is always fun to write in anything. Um, and it took me a couple minutes to write it. And right after that, I think I entered it in a couple of Romance Writers of America contests just to get feedback, and at the same time submitted it to Pitch Wars, and I was chosen. And Brighton Walls was my mentor, and in about 3 months' time, we rewrote about 70% of the book to have it ready for the agent showcase.
Wonderful. How do you, there are a number of authors out there who are very adept at putting out multiple books in a year. I mean,
Yes.
there are some that it's like they've got to release every other month.
Hmm.
How do how do you feel competing with that, or do you feel as though you need to compete with that kind of a turnout with your books?
Um, Mad respect for everyone that can put out multiple books a year, but that is just not me. Um, I think for me, there's not quite as much pressure. I think for strictly indie authors, that they are kind of directly competing with that. How often can you put out a book, keep your name out there, keep your Amazon algorithms up? I think with traditional authors and authors that are hybrid, it's not quite as much pressure. So,
So you're of course you're traditionally published, but are you looking at expanding and maybe doing some self-publishing in the future?
yes, I am actually. As I said, I started out writing urban fantasy, and there are tons of readers out there. It's a very popular genre, but traditional publishing is very leery of it right now. They're not really buying anything new. And I've talked with my agent, of course, and I have a trilogy that I hope will be ready by the end of the year.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit, what your writing schedule is like on a day-to-day basis?
I would love to say that I have a firm schedule and I get up and I don't check email or Twitter or go down rabbit holes and I write all day, but it's really more in spurts. Of course, I have children, so I kind of write around their schedule. And the big joke is I've written, and lost chapters while I was sitting in the parent pickup line and had nothing but a McDonald's bag to scribble ideas down on. So,
I think that's the bane of all of our existence, in all honesty. So, well, and I think that's just amazing that you're able to balance your writing career, your family, and now are you working outside of the home, or are you more of a stay-at-home mom?
um, right now, everyone is at home, of course, but yes. So, and
Okay.
I applaud people that are stuck at home right now and are cranking out more books because that's not me.
So when you're writing, uh, what what would be the most challenging part of the writing aspect? Is it, you know, generating the main idea? Is it finding time to write? Is it, identifying with characters? Is there some aspect of the process that you find to be the most challenging?
Yes, I am one of those writers that loves a good character. If you have good character, I will follow you all the way to the end, no matter what. And so when I start writing, I always have my characters first. And the joke is, then I need a plot to stick them into. So coming up
Okay.
with a outer plot arc is always challenging.
So, are you a pantser or a plotter?
I started out as a pantser, and after writing myself into a corner I couldn't get out of a couple of times, I am now a diehard plotter. My outlines are 14 or 15 pages easily.
Okay. Wow, my hat's off to you. I have tried plotting, and I've done it a few times, and I sat down and I plotted out the whole book, and I have an entire novel of plot notes. And then I get into writing the story, and I'm 25, 35, 50 pages in, and then I'm going through, and I'm just writing, and then I stop and I go back to check something, and or look at my outline, and I'm so far off base. So my hats off to you. I cannot stay with plotting to save my life, honestly, because I get into it, and then the characters take over, and then they're telling me the story, and so
Yes.
I'm merely the instrument as opposed to the designer, so to speak. So do you do of course, right now with the circumstances that we're all in, there's not a lot of social interaction, but uh, outside of this current situation, are you looking forward to doing any book signings, readings, those sorts of things?
I had quite a few scheduled thanks to Let's Talk Promotions and Echo Shea, my publicist, and it looks like everything is probably going to be canceled. We were hoping to have our debut party at Con Carolinas in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is kind of my home con, even though it's in a different state. And we had some book signings lined up, but those are kind of backburnered right now.
Understandable. Are you a ebook or a print reader?
Both.
Both.
But there are a few authors that they're my Instabuy authors that I started out with physical books, and so I have to have the entire collection in physical books. But otherwise, I want to read the story right now, and so I just overload my Kindle.
I never. I, I don't think you can overload a Kindle. In all honesty, I mean, I don't have one myself. I rely on my smartphone. I have
Mhm.
all of my books that I read on there. So when we're traveling, or we're going anywhere, I usually take because I get car sick now. Didn't before, but I do now. I usually take like a gravel or something, and then I'll sit and read for part of the journey. I have to, because otherwise I have to keep busy, and I love reading. Um, so when you started off with this the whole process, um, can you tell us a little bit about how you reacted to the contract offer or the purchase office offer for your debut novel?
Um, I am kind of a study in what you shouldn't do. So do as I say, not as I do. At the time, as I mentioned, I had gotten into Pitch Wars, and we had completely revised the book and started querying with it. And after about a year of close calls, almost there, but they didn't quite fall in love with it, I had a talk with my mentor, Brighton Walsh, and she said, these are your options. This is what you can do. You can put this one in a drawer again, start something new. You can look at self publishing, which is definitely a valid idea, or you can just start sending to publishers that don't require an agent. And after a little thought, I knew that I didn't want to go indie yet. I still wanted that safety net while I learned. So I went ahead and, in one swoop, queried all the publishers that I was interested in. And of course, with romance, there are quite a few. So I was in a good spot that way. And about 6 weeks after I did that, I got the call from RWA that the manuscript had finaled in the Golden Heart. So I
Oh,
updated,
wow.
yes, so that was great. And I updated all of my queries. And just for the heck of it, there were a few agents that still had fulls out. And it's like, oh, okay, I'll do the polite thing. I'm sure they're not interested, but I'll go ahead and update them as well. And shortly after that, I got, I think, 4 calls from publishers asking to set up a call and discuss publication. So I immediately turned around and sent that information to the agents that had said, hey, we are interested after all, and gave them a shorter deadline since I needed to know if there would be any agent interest before I committed to the publisher. And after a couple of calls, I did sign with Ava Scalzo at Spielberg Lit. She's really great, by the way. And I literally signed with her that day, and 5 minutes later said, here are these offers, go through the contracts for me.
Which is fantastic. It's such a challenge to get an agent these days, I think. I mean, I've been in the industry almost 11 years,
Hmm.
published for almost 11 years. And it wasn't until I think 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that I actually landed an agent. And my
Hmm.
agent is not actually a literary agent. My agent is for film and TV. So, and I kind of fell into that through a connection through the publishing house that I had at the time, which I since stepped back from and got back into focusing on my writing and my my goals and trying to get the series that I'm working on made into a movie, etc. So it's very challenging. I can definitely see where it would be kind of a nail biter of trying to juggle which avenue do you want to go, whether you
Hmm.
want to go through the agent and then the publisher, or the publisher and then maybe the agent kind of idea after the fact. But so I applaud you because I didn't have the patience, honestly, to look at being an agent. Um, and I tried. I think I queried in the first 4 years of of my career as a published author. I think I probably queried about 300 agencies,
Yes.
and no, your writing is, it's very good, but we're not interested in that particular genre, or we're not interested in that particular style, or there was always something.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of authors, struggle with that. How do you decide? Do you want an agent or do you want to be unagented? How did you decide that you wanted to have an agent as opposed to just seating the pants and just throwing it out to publishers and seeing if a publisher would pick you up?
Um, when I first started writing, I didn't even know I was writing a book until the pages started piling up. And one day I told my husband, I think I've written one. And so I found a writer's track at a local convention. And it's like, okay, this sounds like something that could help me. And I met quite a few agented writers there. So that kind of influenced how I wanted to go at first. And with my urban fantasy, I'm sure I queried well over 100 agents with it, and it went through several revisions during that time. But I was also a new author, and I did not really have a grasp on the craft yet. And I really owe my critique partners that read those awful first drafts. But I decided that was the way I wanted to go, and it was what 7, 8 years later when I finally did the last pitch wars with the manuscript that did get a publisher. And at that point, I felt confident enough in the industry that, if there are no agents interested, I think this book is, of equal quality to anything that is out there that is traditionally published because it had been through multiple revisions with experienced authors. And at that point, it's like I feel confident sending it out to publishers and working with publishers because I still didn't want to go completely independent yet and have all of the worries of, proofreaders, cover art, setting up your distribution network, dealing with Amazon. Although it's definitely a valid way to go, and a lot of my friends do that and are very, very happy with it. But they're a little bit more go getter than I am, I think.
Yeah, I think indie authors have to really be prepared for the amount of work. And I've talked to some, some people who in my social circle outside of writing have approached me about teaching them how to write and that sort of thing. And,
Mhm.
once I get into it and I start saying, well, this is what you got to do and this is what you got to do and you got to do this and this and this and this and there, then they're going, no, no, because it is a lot of work. Um, have you found in your circle, your social circle outside of your writing friends, family, coworkers, people that you perhaps have met over the course of your day-to-day living, have you ever had anyone come up and say, hey, if you can do it, I can do it. Can you teach me how to write? I need to know, I want to do it, I can do it. If you can do it, I can do it. Have you ever had that happen?
I've gotten a lot of people that kind of went at it as if I had time, I would write a book. And it's like, well, you have to make time. It's not quite as easy as you think. But I haven't really had anyone in my day to day circle ask, could you help me get published or I want to write. So,
That's good. That's good. It's definitely that's an experience that is definitely an experience. Now you write urban fantasy. So have you had any of those books? I know you said you were working on a trilogy. You're looking at maybe self-publishing,
mhm.
but have you submitted any of those to your agent, to publishers? Have you considered doing any of that? Or are you just going to look at just doing that yourself?
At this point, I actually have three urban fantasy short stories out. One is in a benefit anthology, Chasing the Light, that we did in honor of a dear friend in my critique writers group who passed away before her short story was published. So the group of us got together and approached John Hartness at Falstaff Books, and he helped us put out an anthology. And the other two, one is in Predators in Petticoats, which just came out this month. And the third one will be coming out hopefully in June, and it is Witches, Warriors, and Wise Women. So excited about those. And I would love to do my trilogy or any of the urban fantasy that I have done traditionally, but I am not really forecasting the market traditional publishing will be all of that friendly anytime soon. So I think most people, if you are writing urban fantasy, my best advice would be prepared to go with smaller press or self-publish.
Okay. That and that makes sense. It's a very tough decision, I think, but it definitely makes sense, and you've obviously thought it through. So I'm looking forward to. I will be looking up your urban fantasy shorts as well and seeing if I can get a copy of those so I can read them as well because you have such a unique writing style. And I know that we all strive to have that uniqueness, that voice that attracts readers, that catches them and really hooks and draws them in. And it can be very challenging to develop. And I think that the amount of work that you have put into learning the craft really is reflected in your writing style and in your writing voice. So when you're working on your books, do you have any some authors they prefer to have heroines that are don't save me, I can save myself, or how do you approach your characters and identifying with them and how to and their character traits? Do you do character interviews or do you figure out who they are in some other way?
First of all, thank you for the compliments. I think nailing voice, your author voice, is one of the most difficult things new writers have to learn. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. Um,
You're welcome.
as for characters, I would like to say that I am methodical and do character interviews and plot out who the character is going to be so that I'm clear on their motivations. But it just doesn't happen that way. I'm usually, just driving along or sitting and a character comes to me. I will say that um, I don't care for the alpha hero, so you will not find any of those in my writing. And I am a fan of competent heroines. I mean, they may be a hot mess, but you know, they still can take care of business. They know what they're doing. Um, Faith Hunter and her Jane Yellow Rock series, I think, were a big influence on my writing. And I have done some retreats and studies with her and David Coe, and I think that their style really meshed with mine, and I learned quite a bit from them.
So, have you ever gone to like writers' retreats? I know we've done conventions, but have you ever actually taken like a writers' retreat, a weekend away, those sorts of things to recharge those creative batteries?
Yes, I have a group, the Roaring Riders, and we actually met at a convention. There's this group of people who had nothing in common except we had sat in on quite a few of the same panels, and we were standing around the last day. And the last day of a convention, you're just exhausted, but at the same time, you're completely hyped up from all the creative energy around you. And we were talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could get together and do something? And one of the members said, well, I have a timeshare around here. How about we do something next year? And it took a little bit longer than that, but we did do it. The entire group, I think there are 9 of us originally, and we brought in um, mentors to help teach classes the entire week that we were at the retreat. At first, since we were all kind of on the same levels a couple of years into the writing journey, but we still had a lot to learn. And those retreats really, really did help, with concrete things like craft, plotting, voice, but also, as you said, it's great at refilling your creative well. It's right up there with reading for me. And I always come away from those ready to write something else right now.
Well, that's fantastic. Are you a voracious reader?
Yes. Um, you can't tell from Goodreads right now, but I have always been someone who could read constantly and I read quickly too. Right now, though, I have a number of regular critique partners and a number of kind of we switch back and forth as we need something, as well as some newer writers that I'm reading for. So most of my reading right now are manuscripts that are not published yet. And that's a lot of fun. And I'm very excited about some of the stuff that's coming up in contemporary romance and in urban fantasy. I'm seeing a lot of diversity and a lot of girl power.
Wonderful. So, if you were speaking to new writers who are just looking to get into the industry now, who are just starting to write and are looking for some advice, what would you say to them?
Um, do your research, learn as much as you can yourself. There are so many resources online right now. When I first started out, I kind of looked at it as from an academic point of view, let me find podcasts like this or blogs or anything like that that I can follow and just treat it kind of like a class. I do an hour a day, a couple hours a week. And at first, some of it, you're not going to be able to take it in and implement it because you're not quite at that level yet, but you will be. And don't be afraid to reach out to other writers or mentors. I have found that the writing community on the whole is great. They are so giving, so helpful, and so willing to pay it forward with new writers. So don't be shy about approaching people. Most people are happy to help.
Wonderful, and I find the same. I think that regardless of what genre you write in, we are a we are a family, and we should support each other. There shouldn't be any of the um, negative connotations that we sometimes come across on social media. Authors saying things that they shouldn't perhaps be saying, or not. They're allowing their emotions to guide their tongue, so to speak. Um, I'm one of those people that I believe in helping everybody, and I think that that's fantastic. And I think new authors, especially, they shouldn't think anything negative to start with, because we all started from nowhere, and
Hmm.
we're all in the same boat.
Exactly. I don't know any writer now that doesn't look back on their early attempts and just cringe. And that's part of the
Yeah,
process. As you go along, you grow and you get better and better. When you know better, do better. And I would agree. I think there are some people that go a little too far or let their emotions get the best of them, as you said. But on the whole, the writing community is very supportive.
exactly. Sorry, my I have the two dogs in the office, so if you hear them whining,
Well, I show dogs, so no problem.
they like to be in everything. They're they're the babies of the family, but they're gonna, oh, you gotta stay in the studio for right now because Dad's out there doing something in the kitchen. My apologies. So you know, how did you find your mentor? Now you said that you got your mentor. So how did you create that relationship?
Um, in every case, it was pretty organic. And the one thing that I will say, having said that the writing community is great, don't go into it looking for what you can get, um, how you can use people. Just be genuine. With me, I mentioned Faith Hunter before and David Coe. They were writers. I had read their work, and of course, I was in awe because at the time, ooh, writers, they're like these mythological creatures up on a pedestal. And I was lucky enough to meet both of them at conventions, and things kind of went from there.
Yeah,
And of course,
wonderful.
RWA romance writers is kind of in transition now. Everyone knows what a dumpster fire that was around Christmas and the first of the year, and they're trying to
Yeah,
overhaul everything now. I hope they do. I am still a member. My membership hadn't lapsed, and I really love my home chapter, which is the cultural, interracial, and multicultural group. But when I first started out, I also submitted quite a bit of my work to RWA chapter contests because the whole point is you get at least three published authors or three publishing professionals feedback. So
yeah.
that was a great help, and hopefully when they get back on their feet, that will happen again. And of course, I have to plug Pitchforks, which is really great and is aimed at helping new writers improve their craft and ultimately go on to publication.
That's true. That's true. Do you read the original? Your old work. Do you go back and reread it?
Occasionally I do, and it's kind of like when you're watching a horror movie and you're looking from behind your hand. That's kind of the way I approach it because, like I said, what you first write is going to be not all that great, and that's okay. And sometimes it is nice to go back and see how far you've progressed.
Okay. It is. It is. I'm one of those authors. Doesn't matter. I'll put a book out, and as soon as it is released and on the shelf, I'm picking it up and reading it just because. That's me. It's just one of those things.
Mhm.
And I've actually had people that have said, "Why are you reading your own work?" And it's like, to see how see how many mistakes I missed.
Exactly. As soon as you send the manuscript off, or as soon as you picked up the book, it's like you find so many things that you could have fixed or done differently.
Yes. Yes, you do. And I think that's it's great because you have having that open mind,
Mhm,
you're going to see things that maybe you've missed in the publishing process.
mhm,
You know, I mean, writing the book can take months, weeks, months, years.
mhm,
But at the same time, the publishing process itself is not an overnight thing. I mean, there's edits, there's you know all these different aspects of the process, which
mhm.
is incredibly nerve wracking. I think, especially if you're not familiar with it. How did you how comfortable were you with that process once you actually got into it?
Um, I had been through so many classes, through the RWA contest and through Pitch Wars, which, are similar to signing and producing a book in that you're going to have edit letters, and sometimes those edit letters are brutal. Revisions and then more revisions and even more revisions. So the actual process has been pretty easy. I've got a great editor, Elena at City Owl, and Tina, who helps direct us with covers and cover copy, and it's been a great process. So, but yeah, if you haven't been through a lot of revisions, or if you haven't been in a lot of critique groups or with critique partners, getting those first edit letters and notes can be kind of stressful.
Yes, I would agree. If someone wanted to get a hold of you to check out, your information, look up your books, etc., how would they go about doing that?
I am all over social media. I'm easy to find. My website is Janet Walden West. .weebly.com. I'm on Twitter as Janet Walden West, Instagram. I have a Facebook author page, just my name again, so I'm pretty easy to find. Of course, I have an Amazon page and a BookBub page as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so very much for taking your time out today of your busy schedule and joining me for our discussion. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to finishing your book. Do you have any final words or final thoughts for our listeners?
Um, I would just encourage anyone that is interested in writing to give it a try, and anyone that does have a manuscript and is feeling a little bit shy about getting it out there or approaching anyone to go for it.
Sweet. I would agree. Awesome. Thank you so very much for joining me today, Janet. I appreciate you taking the time out. And I thank everyone for listening as well. If you have any questions or would like to know more about Janet, you can look her up on her website, of course. And I will have a link for you down below as well as her social media links. So you can look at her there. Now, your book is due out April 21st.
Yes, salt plus stilettos, not salt and stilettos. It is. Pre-orders are up on Amazon right now, and it will be out the 21st.
Awesome. Wonderful. So again, if anyone is interested in grabbing a copy, pop over to Amazon, grab a copy, grab a pre-order, and we wish you all the best, Jack. Thank you so very much for taking the time out to join us, and I hope that you will make time in the future to pop on back, and we can sit down again and have another discussion.
I would love to. This has been so much fun. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for coming and spending a little bit of time with us, and we will talk to you next week.